Hey, welcome to the video for the first week of class as we enter the topic of layers of culture and an introduction to culture. Um, the things that I want to reflect on in these video updates or video reflections that will be at the beginning of each class are going to be related to the main theme week by week. So I'm not going to go into all the readings and all that kind of thing in these. I will just sort of give an overview and a way of angling into the topics. So this first one has to do with culture. And if you were to if we were live in a room right now, I would probably go to a whiteboard and just have us do a sort of one word free association. I say culture, you say whatever, and you may want to just sort of do that in your own mind. Things, all sorts of things would come to our minds about culture. As we did positive and negative things in terms of how we understand culture, how we think about culture, what we don't know about culture, and all of that. But I'm going to focus on really a very simplistic taxonomy or model of understanding the dimensions of culture. It's incredibly complex and interwoven, but just to kind of get us a simple working framework. If you think of culture as made up at maybe the most simplistic or introductory level, we think of behaviors, stuff that people do, how they dress, how they eat, how they shake hands, just those sort of behavioral aspects of culture. What is modesty? What's polite? All that sort of thing. That begins that last those last two examples, modesty and politeness. Are tied to other levels of culture as well, but they tend to have behavioral expressions. Another level of culture might be our sort of social structures and social interactions. What makes up a family? How do we know that you're a family? Friendship, leadership structures. Is it a tribal culture? Is it a democracy? All those sort of cultural frameworks that are social in nature is a second one. Interwoven into that would be the roles of men and women and what constitutes an adult, all that sort of thing. If you go to a youth group in East Africa, you're going to find 30 and 40-year-olds sometimes in the youth group. So social structures. So you've got behavior, social structure. At what we might refer to as a deeper level, you start to move into the whole area of values and ethics. Not just what's right and wrong, but what's good, what's beautiful, what's valuable, what's worthy of respect and honor, those sorts of things. And then finally, or ultimately, whether you want to see it as deeper or as an overarching category, there would be, for want of a better term, worldview. The framework, oftentimes something we're unaware of, that through which we look at everything and which kind of helps us define things that make sense or don't make sense. Typically this could include where we think things come from. What's the nature of stuff? Is there a personal, ultimate reality behind everything, or is it an impersonal force, or is there really nothing at all other than what we see and taste and feel? Those are worldview dimensions. Are there things that are real that we can't see? Are there beings that are real that we can't see? Do plants have souls? All that kind of stuff is worldview. So those are the four levels, and I want you to be paying attention to those. Starting with those this first week, because I want you to pay attention to them as we move through the course. Every reading, every topic is somehow going to come back to these, even if we don't do it explicitly week by week. So just be thinking of that. But let me make a few comments now, because just laying them out there as four categories or four layers of culture may give the impression that you can sort of understand this is behavior and this is ethics and this is social structure and this is worldview, and they're distinct. Or you may think that all of them are tied together. So the way I shake hands is ultimately tied to my worldview and all that sort of thing. So let me make some additional comments to try to illuminate and unpack a little bit of the complexity of this. Obviously, if you were to do a whole course in anthropology or even sociology, you would get a whole range of technical terminology and all that sort of thing. I'm going to try to avoid all that as best I can. But let me say, first of all, that the layers are certainly, or every dimension really, of culture, and we're trying to create a 4-point outline to understand culture, I guess, with these layers. But they are all connected. They really are. Even behaviors that no longer seem to be connected to a current worldview, at some point along the line, were connected. Why do we shake hands with our right hand in Western culture? You can trace it all the way back down to um, trust issues and making sure somebody didn't have a weapon and things like that. Why do people eat with their right hand? Why do people eat with chopsticks? Why do people eat with spoons? Why is modesty this or that? And it can get actually. I mean, these are all connected, um, but what makes it confusing is that they also change. They're also fluid. Um, so it's never static. Just think about it in our own, in a Western cultural context, for example. If I was to walk outdoors wearing only my underwear, people would be shocked and see it as a lack of modesty. If I go to a swimming pool and I wear a bathing suit that is actually smaller than my underwear, I'm okay because of the context. Now, 100 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. So there is still a value that we give. There's a value layer of our culture that is tied to modesty, but that can change. It's fluid. So they are all connected. Behavior, what we wear in this case, and values and ethics, they are connected, but they're fluid and they can change. And this is, of course, one of the things that makes it really difficult if you are working cross-culturally and you're trying to get advice about how a behavior, a social structure, a set of values, and worldview are all fitting together. You're actually entering at a particular point in time into a culture and people that is in constant flux. And you're going to have all kinds of people giving you all kinds of information. So they are connected. They're also very fluid. Um, and I think the other dimension is that they provide us starting points. So some of our starting points for culture are unseen. We don't actually know that we are starting, that we're standing in a certain spot in the midst of worldview and values and social structure and seeing everything else and interpreting everything else as a starting point and a frame of reference, and it shapes what we see. But we're not aware of that, and that's yet another point, which is that that these things are intuitive, kind of subliminal almost. That's why it's really difficult when you go to another culture and you start asking people, why do you do this? Why do you do this like this? Imagine people asking us, why is that okay and this is not okay? Why do you do this but not that? Etc. So they're connected, they're fluid, they provide starting points by which we make sense of things, but it's very intuitive and kind of preconceptual, unspoken, unaware kind of stuff that involves how we interpret and understand things. Two other points. There are general dimensions of culture. So there are things you can say generally are true about a particular cultural group, a people group, or a sociolinguistic group, even a national group that's made up of multiple linguistic or social groups will begin to take on certain cultural generalizations Um, you can say things like this particular culture is very punctual, or this culture honors elders, or this culture, et cetera, et cetera. Um, those are generalizations. The thing that makes it difficult is that the more discrete you get within a general cultural group, people in cities, people in villages, people over the age of 40, people under the age of 40, men, women, married, single. You start to distill it down. You finally get down to one concrete individual. And they will have each kind of narrowing down of the cultural group you're looking at is going to is going to manifest the generalizations in their own unique ways, down to as specific an example of embodying whatever culture I'm part of that exists in this person, Kevin. So these are really, really challenging things when it comes to cross cultural communication. And the topic of our course, um, evangelism and discipleship in cross cultural contexts, because there are the general things that we want to be aware of, and which will start to shape our understanding of how to communicate the gospel and do discipleship in other cultures. And yet, that will have to be nuanced and varied down to the actual individual. That's true even in more communal, less individualistic cultures. Um, and so it just makes it really complicated. Or, as one of my Costa Rican friends likes to say, or would probably interject at this point, full of wonderful opportunities. So keep these things in your mind, particularly as you now enter the readings. If you haven't already begun to read the first book that we'll be looking at over these next 2 weeks, Misreading Scripture through Western eyes. We're going to look at the introduction in the first 4 chapters this week, and so as you do that, they're trying to surface cultural realities in the Scripture and how a very generalized Western perspective of reading Scripture might get some things wrong. While that is related it is related to the topic of our course, it is not specifically about evangelism and discipleship. I hope you'll be able to squeeze some good juice out of this lemon or orange or whatever you hope you're eating as you chew on this book and think of these concepts. So enjoy your reading, and look forward to chatting with you online in our discussions. Thank you.